Part 3. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 21. Maybe there are a lot of people who have chosen to resign recently, so the person in charge of this matter doesn't seem to care so much about Jiu's resignation. He was originally a part-time worker, so it was very easy to complete the resignation and settle the salary. The park is open as usual today, right? Xiu asked casually, and the staff member nodded subconsciously when he heard this, but soon looked at Xiu with a little doubt. You have come to resign, why are you still asking this? Xiu didn't say anything, just smiled and walked away. After leaving the park gate, Xiu went directly to the ticket hall of the park and spoke to the lady at the front desk. Hello, I want a trainer ticket. Then he put the money on the counter. The lady looked at Xiu's uniform that he hadn't changed yet, and for a moment she didn't react. She thought Xiu was joking, waved her hand and said, Stop it, I'm at work. No joke, I've resigned and I'm not an employee of the park anymore. At this time, the park had just reopened, and it would take time to restore the number of tourists before, so there were not many people in the entire ticket hall. Xiu's strange behavior attracted the attention of the staff around him. After repeated requests, the young lady still issued a ticket, and also a batch of special pokeballs for the wild area. Hello, welcome to the wild area of Light Red City. With this ticket, you can. The young lady said a lot of precautions as usual, but Xiu didn't pay much attention to them. He picked up one of the pokeballs and re-entered the wild area. Hey! You haven't taken these yet. Seeing this, the young lady opened her mouth and wanted to stop him, but found that Xiu had already left the hall. But he came back before a while. The young lady thought that Xiu remembered to take back the pokeballs and was about to take them out again, but he didn't expect Xiu to say, Okay, help me collect the remaining balls and then calculate the money. There were 9 pokeballs left, and each was collected for 100 yuan. Xiu took the returned 900 yuan and left the park. Only the young lady was left with a confused look on her face. This was the first time she had seen someone who was so outrageous to take advantage of the park. Although the park belongs to Jianhong City, it is only a category. It is not even a suburb if you really count it. There is a long distance in between. If you want to leave the wilderness, you must take a car. And the only way to connect this place is the tourist bus arranged by the park. That's why Xiu was in a hurry to leave, because once the time is up, he will have to wait for another 2 hours. Sitting on the tourist bus. Because this bus departs from here to Jianhong City, he is the only passenger in the whole bus, and the driver is driving silently, so the surroundings seem particularly quiet. Xiu stroked the wild ball in his hand and looked out the window. It is the most reasonable means to spend a little money to bring Scythe out of the regular channel, so there will be no problems. Otherwise, although smuggling or some other methods can take Scythe away, it will also offend the park if the other party really wants to pursue it. Xiu doesn't think he can afford it. Moreover, he has already offended the hunter organization. Now running away for refuge and offending another one is a completely stupid operation. Xiu originally thought that even if it was a bit far from the city, it would only take about half an hour to drive. Unexpectedly, the car drove for more than an hour, and it was only at this time that Xiu saw the buildings belonging to the city from the window. And he was not the only one in the car, there were also some residents of villages and towns along the way. Jianhong City has arrived, the driver called out, and the people in the car got off one after another, and Xiu also came to the first big city in the elf world. Looking at the modern buildings around, Xiu was a little dazed for a while, as if he had returned to that place. Until the exhaust gas brought by the car left choked him awake. Cough. Xiu covered his nose and fled from the roadside, wandering aimlessly in the city. This is a city, where are you? The man saw Xiu asking questions, and after hearing the price, his face hesitated and was directly weird. Xiu didn't care much. He had seen many such people in his previous life. There was no need to waste his time on them, so he turned around and left. Seeing Xiu being so straightforward, the man shouted without any disguise. "If you want to get a bargain, just sleep on the street. It's free there." Xiu came out of the residential area and looked back at the buildings behind him. He knew that this was not a suitable place for him. To be honest, he really didn't have any goals. He just wanted to leave the park and find a more stable environment to study. Stability, of course, requires a place to live. For this reason, Xiu almost walked through the nearby residential areas to understand the current situation of Qianhong City. There are many houses, all kinds of them, but they are directly discouraged when asked about the price. It is not suitable for him at all. But he didn't plan to live in the city. There are many people here, and he might be recognized. And don't forget that he is still a trainer. Pokemon also need space to move around. Then only the suburbs can have a place suitable for him. Compared with the prosperity of the central city, the suburbs seem a bit depressed. Of course, it should be much quieter, without many commercial elements, and there is no anxiety. Xiu walked slowly on the street, observing the surrounding environment. There is another obvious difference. In the city, you can still see some people with elves on the street, but in the suburbs, there are very few people, and the people tend to be middle-aged and elderly, and there are few young people. After walking for most of the day, it was already dark, and his stomach began to protest. Xiu had to stop and find a fast food restaurant on the street to solve the dinner, and then found a slightly old park to release Casey and the others. After the scyther came out of the pokeball, it habitually looked around, and relaxed a little when it saw that there were no people around. Casey closed his eyes as usual, and I don't know if it was really sleeping. And the little Fuden was obviously very hungry, and he grabbed Xiu's clothes as soon as he came out. "Eat, eat, eat." Xiu had to pick up the little Fuden and put it on the bench, and took out their food. Then something embarrassing happened. The scyther had sickles in both hands. It was no problem to hunt and pick fruits in the forest, but it was a little bit overwhelmed by the rations in this bowl, so Xiu had to help feed it. Fortunately, Xiao Fuden can eat by himself now, otherwise he would have to feed too. When Xiu finished feeding it, the sun was setting. He wandered around Qianhong City almost all day, and got to know the surrounding situation a little bit, and also saw the simple folk customs of Qianhong City. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 22. At night, Xiu didn't look for any hotel, but found a corner in the park to camp, as if he really wanted to sleep on the street. Xiu sat under a street lamp not far away, flipping through the books given to him by the station master in the dim light, and the elves were all beside him. The scyther that was sharpening its knife on the iron bench suddenly flapped its wings and retreated, alertly raising its knife to a pile of abandoned building materials. Xiu had been with scyther for a while, so of course he knew what it was reacting to. He quickly put down the book in his hand, took back the little lucky egg with the pokeball, and then ran to scyther. Is there something going on? Xiu looked in that direction carefully. Judging from his experience, it was either Rattata or Rattata that appeared here. After all, this kind of Pokemon was the most active in the human area. Casey seemed to be awakened by the noise, and turned his head towards them, but his eyes were still closed. Xiu didn't want to fight it now, but he was going to sleep here tonight, so it was better to deal with the local snake. Xiu looked around and found no one around, so he took out his hunting rifle and approached the place carefully. Scyther and Casey were on guard beside him. Little Rattata was not necessarily weak. Just think about the dead security guard. The human body was still too fragile. Xiu would definitely not be able to withstand a bite on an important part, so it was not too careful. As Xiu approached, he heard some rustling sounds in the pile of debris. Unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to accurately determine the location by listening to the sound, so he could only slowly find it according to the sound. Scyther stared at the pile of garbage when he heard these sounds, and seemed a little impatient. "Let me do it." Casey came over from the side, raised his hand and waved, and the pile of debris loosened. As Casey used telekinesis to move the debris one by one, the voice became more and more urgent, and Chiu also became more and more nervous. He focused all his attention on the scene in front of him, hoping to kill with one shot. Before Casey finished moving, a black lightning ran out from the corner. Chiu subconsciously fired 2 shots in that direction, but the place was full of waste and garbage, and the net was still blocked before it was deployed. The black shadow was not affected at all, and it was about to run away. Chiu had to shout to Casey, "Catch it quickly, don't hurt it." Chiu still left a line, "The elves who can live in the city will not be too cruel, otherwise they would have been cleared out long ago." Casey flew out suddenly, and then Chiu saw that the elf was caught in the air by Casey's telekinesis. Chiu hurried over, and when he saw that the elf closed his eyes and paddled his limbs desperately, he smiled. "It's you." Electric Mouse. Chiu didn't expect to meet a mascot as soon as he went out. Others idiots met Ho-Oh at the beginning, but he met Electric Mouse when he went out. They all have a bright future. Pitch, Piku, Piku. Piku secretly opened his eyes and looked at Chiu, then immediately closed his eyes and moved his hands and feet faster. As Chiu approached, the electric sac on Piku's face began to emit a small amount of arcs, and finally turned into lightning from the 2 electric sacs to the surroundings. Then, Chiu found that nothing happened to him. The lightning disappeared before it reached him. When he looked at Piku again, he had already fainted with his head drooping. "Kathy, let it go." Chiu smiled. Because of Piku, he had specially checked Piku's illustrations before. He remembered that it said that Piku's electric sac was too small and not good at storing electricity, so it would suddenly discharge electricity when frightened, and sometimes it would also knock himself out. "I didn't expect to see it today. This can be regarded as a famous scene." Chiu reached out to catch Piku. When he touched it, he felt a tingling sensation, but it didn't hurt. Instead, it felt good and furry. "Let's go back." Chiu carried Piku back to the bench. Maybe Piku was used to being shocked, so he woke up after a while and stared at Chiu beside him. "Piku? Piku?" It was stunned for a few seconds and then woke up like a start, turning around and wanted to run. "Wake up." Chiu smiled and didn't pay much attention to it, letting it run away. Without Chiu's words, the other 2 elves didn't pay much attention to it. Scyther just watched Piku run away, and Casey didn't even look at it. Chiu continued to study with his book under the streetlight, but something interesting happened. He found Piku looking at him nearby. Originally, Chiu didn't care much, but Xiao Fuden seemed to be interested in Piku and seemed to want to play with it, so he walked towards it happily. Chiu also had some ideas when he saw this and wanted to communicate with it. At least this Piku should not disturb his sleep tonight. So he took out a bag of ordinary Pokemon rations, poured a little on his hand, fed a little to Xiao Fuden in front of Piku, then put the remaining rations on the steps, and finally walked away from that place. Chiu deliberately took out a book and pretended to read it, but he was actually observing Piku. Piku looked at Chiu curiously, then looked at the small pile of rations, and moved carefully towards the rations. Chiu suddenly put down the book and pretended to look around. The Piku was scared and ran back, hiding under the slide, showing a head and looking at Chiu. "Ha ha ha." Chiu saw Piku's appearance and didn't hide it, and laughed directly. This laugh scared Piku so much that he didn't even dare to show his head. "Kathy, help me connect telepathically with it." Chiu didn't want to tease it anymore, there was no time to play anymore. After hearing what Chiu said, Kathy flew to the slide, and then Chiu felt that familiar feeling and quickly extended it over. "You, who are you? Why did you kick me out?" Sorry, Xiu didn't know what to say for a moment, and suddenly felt like he was bullying a child. I'm just staying for one night and will leave tomorrow. The food is my compensation, and you can come back, I won't kick you out. Xiu could only soften his attitude a little. He was sure that he was a little too much. But teasing Piku is really fun. Really? Piku's head popped up again, looking at Xiu carefully, and then it found Kathy floating above its head, and suddenly it was scared and fell to the ground, and the electric sac on its cheek also burst out a little arc, but it soon disappeared. The electric energy stored in the electric sac was just used up. How could it be restored so quickly? Come back, don't scare it. Xiu was worried that Piku would have the same stress reaction as Scyther, which would be troublesome. After Casey left, Piku got up, hid in the corner, and secretly watched Xiu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 23. This time Xiu couldn't help but tease it, it was so cute. Piku is born with a petite figure and a plush body. His facial features look cute and adorable even without any facial expressions. In addition, now it is holding the base of the slide with both hands, with half of its head exposed. One of its two black-edged pointed ears stands up, and the other falls to the side. The expression on its face looks a little scared. Such a pitiful little thing is really embarrassing. People feel sad. Come to my brother's place, there is something to eat. Xiu didn't know what kind of smile he was making. It was probably a silly smile, but it was just silly anyway. Piku. Piku had already shrunk under the base when Xiu came over. Seeing Piku like this, Xiu could only take out his trump card, took out a blue orange and dangled it under the base. Xiu had already seen Piku when he was scared by Casey. Now the little guy's electric bag has run out of power, and he is too timid, so he is not as much of a threat as a mouse. Xiu has been at the rescue station for so long, so he naturally knows that the best way to have a relationship with wild elves is food. Of course, there are also some elves who will be greedy and want to steal your food. Therefore, it is best not to expose too much before ensuring that you have enough strength, especially when facing elves such as Mahula, Meow Meow, and Pickpocket Cat. Come out, there's something delicious. Xiu kept teasing Piku, watching it think about coming over but not daring to come under the base. It's really fun. Xiu was not in a hurry, but squatted on the ground, opened his hands and waited for it to come over. Under the temptation of food, Piku gradually walked out of the base and cautiously approached Xiu. His eyes were fixed on the blue and orange in Xiu's hand. From time to time, he would look up at Xiu warily, and then continue to move forward slightly. As long as there is any disturbance around, he will stop vigilantly. When the reaction is big, he will even run, and then stick his head out from the base to look at Xiu. This feeling of fishing is quite interesting. Xiu also enjoys this feeling, especially when he can see the fish. Piku came to Xiu's hand and looked at the blue-orange in Xiu's hand. It recognized this thing as something that could fill its stomach, and it was already very hungry. Piku couldn't bear it any longer and took a bite. The slightly sour pulp made it tremble, and the electric energy just stored in the electric bag was released again. Ah, Xiu felt as if he had been electrocuted. His hand suddenly went numb, his fingers contracted unconsciously, and he suddenly held the blue-orange in his hand. Xiu's face suddenly distorted, and then he gradually felt his hands begin to regain consciousness. Casey and Flying Mantis, who heard Xiu's cry, had already come over, especially Casey, who cut through the air like a shooting star. Xiu felt like he saw teleportation. I'm fine, don't be nervous, it didn't mean it. Xiu quickly stopped Casey and the Flying Mantis from attacking. It's not that Xiu is partial to it because it's cute, but he just saw why Piku discharged electricity, and the electricity only made him numb and didn't make him feel any discomfort, so it didn't matter. However, Xiu still smiled to himself. I didn't expect that I would be treated as a protagonist today, so it's not a bad idea to be shocked. But what made Xiu strange was that Piku didn't move away from his big reaction just now, but just stayed in place. Xiu thought it was frightened, so he went over and poked its long ears with his fingers, but it was still the same and he just looked up at Xiu. Like guilt. Xiu was suddenly confused. Can you imagine a mouse making a remorseful expression? Xiu suddenly laughed. This world is so interesting. Don't be afraid, just keep eating. I think you've been hungry for a long time. Xiu took the opportunity to touch Piku's long ears, which felt great and plush. When Xiu communicated with it telepathically just now, he felt the hunger emanating from it, otherwise Xiu would not have chosen a tree fruit like blue-orange that can quickly replenish physical strength. Come. Xiu handed the blue-orange to Piku's mouth. Piku. Piku didn't eat the blue tangerine on his lips, but wanted to say something to Xiu. Casey, what did it say? Xiu turned to look at Casey, and then a familiar feeling came over. Why aren't you afraid of me? Don't you feel pain? I heard it when I fixed the link and was very embarrassed. How could he say this the first time they met? This Piku didn't look very smart. It hurts. But why should I be afraid of you? Xiu put it on his hand and raised it while it was still, and pulled it back in front of him. But he is very afraid of me. Piku huddled in Xiu's hand. Is he afraid that you have something to do with me? Xiu said with disdain and handed the blue orange over again. Let's eat something first. Little Lucky Egg looked at Piku curiously. It had never seen such an elf before. Piku was frightened by the approaching Little Lucky Egg and hid in Xiu's hand, holding Xiu's fingers with both hands. Okay, they are all my friends and will not hurt you. Xiu lifted Piku up with one hand, returned to the bench, and stuffed the blue orange into Piku's hand. You can eat it yourself, I won't bother you anymore. After finishing speaking, Xiu went to bring the small pile of rations over, placed it in front of it, and said, this is my compensation for you. I will leave early tomorrow morning. Piku was making such a fuss, and the light was too dark, making his eyes hurt when he looked at it. Xiuya had no intention of continuing to read, so he found an open space in the corner to clean up, and then set up a tent. But before he could finish what he was doing, the little thing ran up to him and called out. Piku Piku. Xiu looked at Piku, who kept shouting next to him, put down the things in his hands, and said with a smile, have you finished eating? Do you want more? Piku Piku. Piku shook his head and pointed in the direction of the bench. Xiu looked over. The pile of rations didn't seem to have changed. So why was it looking for him? Piku Piku. What did you say? Xiu scratched his head. Without Casey, he couldn't understand the elf's words. Xiu could only call the translator. Casey, come here and help me. Casey glanced at Xiu, then looked at Piku, who was talking. After a while, Xiu and Casey connected. It said that the electric shock hit you just now, and it didn't want those rations. It took it as an apology. Ha ha ha, Xiu laughed directly after hearing this. No matter how miserable he was, he wouldn't be so bad as to ask it to apologize. Okay, I accept your apology. Those will be regarded as my rent for staying here tonight. You can go and eat. I still have more than enough. Piku Piku. Piku turned around twice and ran away, but Xiu didn't pay much attention to it and continued to clean up the site. After a while, Xiu heard the sound of ring, ring, ring. When he looked over, he saw that it was Piku coming over with a small bell. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 24. What do you want to do? Xiu squatted down and looked at it. Piku Piku raised the bell and faced Xiu. Do you want to give it to me? Xiu picked up the small bell. It was a very ordinary copper bell, strung with a red rope, and looked like a decoration for some pets. Xiu originally thought that he had found a bargain, exchanging a little food for a prop, but it turned out to be an ordinary bell, useless. I don't know what Xiu thought of, but he laughed. He didn't have the life of the protagonist, but he still wanted the luck of the protagonist. He was really a fool. Okay, I'll take this, you go eat first. Xiu put the bell in his backpack. Piku looked very happy, running and jumping to the bench to eat. Xiu smiled when he saw this, and he didn't know whether he was talking to Casey or talking to himself. This world is really interesting, I'm looking forward to it. It took a long time to set up the tent for the first time. Xiu lay in the small tent with a moisture-proof and heat-insulating blanket underneath. It was quite comfortable. This is definitely the best place in Qianhong City. It's convenient for life. You can go shopping downstairs. The environment is beautiful, quiet enough, no noise disturbs people, and the air is very good. You can see the forest at a glance. Every morning you can breathe the freshest air from nature. The indoor environment is better. The landlord obviously caught a person with a rare opportunity, and he didn't care about anything else, so he just blew it. It's okay here, but the price is a little expensive. Xiu looked around with a faint smile on his face. Hearing this, the landlord's face fell, and he smiled awkwardly and said, "This price is already the lowest in the city." You. After a lot of bargaining, Xiu finally got it at a good price. 1 bedroom and 1 living room, plus the bathroom, it's only about 30 square meters. The furniture is only a very simple wooden bed, and the conditions are not even as good as those in the park. But Xiu was not here to enjoy himself. It was enough for him to have a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Xiu looked at the convenience store not far away, and then looked at the remote and desolate environment around him, and smiled unconsciously. He liked this place because it was remote and quiet, and the price was cheap enough. After a little cleaning, the room that had been empty for who knows how long had a little more life. But Xiu did not stay, but went out directly, walked around, and then came to the forest not far away. "Come out," with Xiu's shout, the poke balls in his hands burst into red light, and Casey and the others appeared on the grass. "We are now temporarily settled, but this is not a reason for us to relax, so I plan to study with you how to enhance our strength. It was mentioned before that the essence of this world is the power brought by the Pokemon, and he did not intend to waste this time of cultivation, but planned to train each Pokemon, develop their potential in a planned way, and enhance their strength at the same time to lay a good foundation for the future. This is why Xiu chose to settle in the suburbs far away from the bustling city. It only takes less than half an hour to walk to the uninhabited forest, which will be a natural training ground. In fact, strictly speaking, only Scythe can be truly trained. Because Xiao Fuden is still in infancy, its intelligence can only understand eating and sleeping, and there are only these two things every day. As for Casey, long-term dormancy is an innate problem of this race, and it is not so easy to overcome. Moreover, Xiu seems to remember that this thing is related to brain development, so he dare not interfere too much, but must ensure that it has enough sleep. Xiu explained the situation briefly, and also focused on Scythe. "By the way, you don't seem to be very old, right?" Xiu looked at Scythe. Its height and weight were a little different from those of an adult Scythe. It should also be in infancy or adolescence. "Forget about this, let me explain how to train first. Casey, your only ability now is telekinesis, which is a very widely applicable ability. It can be used in attack, defense, running, etc. What we have to do now is to develop reasonable means and tap its potential uses." Xiu knew that there was no need to entangle this, so he simply let it go, and then pulled the topic back, and first talked a lot about Casey's situation. Telekinesis is indeed, as he said, with huge development potential, but at the same time, There are also difficulties in development, and Casey's physical condition is naturally limited, so he can only try at first to see the specific situation. Spy Mantis, your means of attack is very obvious, which is a pair of sharp sickles, so the development direction should be based on this. As for Spy Mantis's ability, it is nothing more than chopping, so just practice according to this idea. As for you. After talking about Casey and Spy Mantis, Xiu looked at Xiao Fuden, play by yourself first. Xiu stood up and stretched his muscles, then said to Spy Mantis, practice the basics with me first, and try running a lap. After that, Xiu ran towards the forest, and Spy Mantis followed him out without much hesitation, leaving only Casey and the silly little Fuden. When Xiao Fuden saw Xiu leaving, he also wanted to follow him, but he was pulled back by the blue fluorescent wrap before he went far. Ring ring ring. The alarm clock rang. Xiu stopped it, put down the book in his hand, and looked up at the field. Scythe was swinging its sickle towards the air in front of it. It was unknown how long it had continued. The speed of the swing had slowed down and it had lost much strength. Casey was floating in the air with his eyes closed. Next to him was a stone the size of a human head, which was floating up and down. As for Xiao Fuden, he was sleeping in the sun. Okay, take a break first and eat something to replenish. Xiu stood up and called to stop their training, took out the fruit that had been prepared long ago, and some other nutritional supplements. The training of elves is not as simple as hard training. It also involves training intensity, nutritional supplements, and other situations. The training intensity should be determined according to the physical condition of the elves. It should not be too outrageous, otherwise it will only consume the potential of the elves in advance, that is, the training will be useless. As for nutritional supplements, it is because high-intensity training is a great burden for elves. In addition to resting, they must also replenish their consumption in time. Specially made food can not only supplement nutrition, but also speed up physical recovery, repair physical injuries and so on. In the training system that Xiu learned by himself, there is a course on how to prepare suitable food for elves, including those nutritional supplements. And Xiu can be regarded as learning and practicing, constantly modifying the formula by observing the situation of the elves. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 25. The flying mantis stopped what he was doing, his arms drooped as if they had lost support, and his stern face was full of fatigue. However, Casey didn't react much. The moment the telekinesis was removed, the stone fell from mid-air, and the sound it made couldn't even make the little lucky egg turn around. But when Xiu took out the food, the little guy immediately got up and walked towards him in a daze. Why does Xiu feel that it hasn't woken up yet? This is a subconscious action. Xiu takes them to eat while talking about the related feelings, and uses this to optimize related training methods and food formulas. Okay, Casey and Xiao Fuden will go back to the Pokeball first, and Flying Mantis will follow me. After a short rest, Xiu alone took Fission Mantis deeper into the forest on the outskirts, and then stopped in a dense forest. Are you ready? Xiu looked at the Flying Mantis. When he saw it nodding, he suddenly jumped forward like a hunting tiger. The Flying Mantis also flapped its wings and rushed forward as if it had been prepared, turning into a green lightning in the dense forest and disappearing in an instant. Xiu followed closely behind. Although he couldn't keep up with its speed, he was not thrown away. Instead, he hung firmly behind it. Whenever the Flying Mantis slacked off for a moment, it would suddenly accelerate, scaring it so much that it quickly accelerated and distanced itself. Training is not limited to elf training, Xiu also needs to participate, otherwise it will be difficult to truly grasp the elf status at this time, which is also a very important reference value for adjusting the training plan. Another reason is that if the training parent is separated from the elf training for a long time, it will inevitably cause the alienation of the relationship. Only by joining in can the relationship between people and elves be strengthened. After such an exercise, it didn't take long for the flying mantis to lose and the winner was decided. Haha, don't stop yet, walk a few steps and then rest. Xiu stopped breathing heavily, saw the flying mantis with an exhausted look on his face, and dragged it forward. Just when Xiuya came into contact with it, he felt that the body temperature of the flying mantis was a little too high at this time, so he could only give it water to cool down while walking slowly. It took a while to recover. Take a rest. Xiu looked up at the sun, and then added, there is still time, let's run again later. The tiredness on flying mantis's face became even deeper when he heard this. Haha, seeing it like this, Xiu raised his hand and patted it on the shoulder. Training is to make yourself stronger. Only by being strong can you control your own destiny. Xiuya didn't care whether the flying mantis could understand or not, so he picked up the food and handed it to replenish energy. The reason why he arranged such training was because apart from the attack method, the flying mantis also had an advantage in speed. However, the problem was that this speed only meant an instantaneous burst of speed and could not be maintained for a long time. And Xiu is now trying to train its speed, strengthen its physical strength, and try to extend its durability. After all, only persistence can make you stronger. Of course, Xiu also discovered that what limited the flying mantis might not be physical strength, but heat dissipation. However, this issue still needs to be studied to draw a more precise conclusion. The pace of life is tight for several days. During the day, I went out to train with the elves to actually verify the content of the breeder. At the same time, I also summarized the mistakes and constantly adjusted the state. In the evening, I study, master the basic knowledge in books as soon as possible, and then move towards advanced research. In order to make effective use of time to improve himself, Xiu, except for a moment of free time for eating and bathing every day, is filled with learning and training, which can be said to be very fulfilling. It's even a bit outrageous, and I even dream about it at night. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He had to shorten this period of time, otherwise once the money was spent but he failed to pass the qualification, the problems he would face would be even more severe. But fortunately, he has had high-intensity learning experience and can handle such learning. Drink, Xiu shouted violently, and slashed the branch in his hand towards the flying mantis like a sharp sword. Judging from the strength, he showed no mercy at all. But for this menacing long sword, the flying mantis didn't have any panic at all. He just turned sideways to avoid it, raised the sickle in his hand, and blocked the branch with one knife. Xiu had no intention of stopping, and the branches in his hands whirred as he danced towards the flying mantis one after another. Either chopping or stabbing, the attack method is cunning and cruel, as if it really wants to kill the opponent. It's just that these flying mantises can always dodge easily, and in some cases where they can't dodge, they can deflect the attacks. This is a plan that Xiu added by observing the training status of the flying praying mantis, aiming to give it the ability to dodge the enemy's attacks when it faces a fierce attack. At the beginning, flying mantis was beaten badly by Xiu. Later, after working hard in training, he gradually adapted to the rhythm and reached his current state. It has to be said that flying mantis is very talented and can learn everything quickly. Anyway, Xiu himself is not sure that he can master it in such a short time. Once the momentum of cultivation here passed, the attack lost the violent storm-like attack before. Instead, due to the excessive explosion just now, the strength faded, and it appeared limp and without strength. The flying mantis also changed its previous defensive posture and raised its hand to slash through easily. Xiu felt a flash of green light, and the branch in his hand was broken from it. Xiu stared at the branch in his hand for 2 seconds, then looked at Scythe, who stood with a knife in his hand, with a stern expression. "It's not time yet, I haven't practiced enough time for dodging training," he added, but Scythe just waved his sickle after hearing it, as if to say that such training was enough and he had mastered the trick. Xiu frowned slightly, but soon calmed down and changed his words, "I'm tired too, take a rest, and change to another project later." After saying that, he threw the branch away and turned to walk to the side. Casey, who was sitting cross-legged under the tree and dormant, seemed to notice the situation here. He slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Scythe. When Xiu walked back, it slowly closed again, with no expression on its face, as if it had never opened its eyes in the beginning. After a short rest, Xiu began to arrange a new project for Scythe. Just now it was dodging training, and now it is attack training. Xiu used silk threads to hang fist-sized stones on trees in the forest. He set so many targets within a 10-meter radius that he couldn't even remember them. As long as he let go of the silk thread in his hand, a stone would fall randomly within the range. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 26. When a target falls after being touched, the flying mantis must capture the target's position, then quickly rush over, and then cut off the thread. This is a plan designed by Xiu to train the flying mantis's mobile attack capabilities, instant reactions, burst speed, etc. Xiu's training programs keep pace with the times. In addition, there are training programs for precision, intensity, and pace. Anyway, there are a lot of them. He did these designs not because he was bored, but because he was afraid that the elf would get bored with single training. After all, no matter how smart they are just like children, and it is difficult for them to tolerate boring and high-intensity study plans like Xiu. Therefore, a few more are used to replace them to stimulate their training enthusiasm and at the same time enhance their strength. Of course, the project with the most exchanges at present is Flying Mantis. Casey's training progressed steadily without any signs of boredom, while the little lucky egg was directly excluded until it grew older. "Okay, come here." Xiu completed debugging the mechanism and shouted to the flying mantis. The flying mantis stood up slowly, then kicked its legs a few times and landed in the center of the range, looking extremely relaxed. Xiu also picked out one of the silk threads in his hand and let it go. At this moment, the other end of the silk thread connection also loosened with the touch. Before the stone fell, the flying mantis that was originally in the center seemed to hear something. It exerted force on its feet and rushed out to one side, leaving only half a footprint in the place. At this time, the stone fell, and Xiu also saw that the direction of the flying mantis was consistent with the stone. As the stone fell, the connecting thread was pulled and tightened. When it fell into the air, the flying mantis had already crossed the distance between the two and passed by without stopping. The stone fell to the ground with a sound, and the flying mantis' entire body moved forward uncontrollably before it could stop. But it didn't mean to stop at all. The next second it took off again and leaped in the other direction. Xiu has already released the second clause. After a while, the 10-meter area was covered with densely packed stones tied with silk threads, and the flying mantis among them looked even more exhausted, his body flushed in the sun, and he completely lost the relaxation he felt at the beginning. The consumption caused by this high burst must be more than before, otherwise it would not be like this. Stop it first. Xiu put the remaining silk thread in his hand back to its original place, and then began to clean up after entering. When the flying mantis heard the end, he immediately put down his hands, then bent over and walked to the side to sit down in the shade of a tree. Walk slowly first and wait for your body to get used to it before sitting down. Xiu said something when he saw this, but the flying mantis seemed to be extremely tired. He sat down on the ground and closed his eyes, completely ignoring the surrounding environment. Xiu just stopped to take a look at it, and then silently cleaned up the mess on the training ground. At the end of the day's training, Xiu was not in a hurry to go back as usual. Instead, he wandered alone on the suburban roads. He then walked onto an extremely remote road and came to the edge of an abandoned factory. He then stopped, turned, and looked aside, and said, "Come out, how many days have you been following me?" Seeing that there was still no reaction, Xiu couldn't help laughing, and then continued to taunt, "Don't get into this profession if you don't have the guts." After saying this, a person walked out of the corner not far away, and a person slowly walked out in the other direction. The two blocked the two directions in front of the factory, trapping Xiu stuck in place. One was a tall and thin man, who looked to be in his 20s and 30s, with an ordinary appearance, but he had a mustache, which made the faces of the people on the road instantly recognizable. The other one had a bald head with a sinewy face, and a greasy smile on his face. He seemed to be laughing and joking, but he couldn't hide the fierceness in his eyes at all. The two of them walked towards Xiu, talking some nonsense. "I didn't expect you to be so brave. You would dare to come to such a remote place even though you knew it." The bald man raised his hand and touched his head. The greasy smile on his face looked extremely vulgar. "Why don't you dare?" Xiu was full of momentum, and his tone didn't mean the slightest bit of weakness. When the mustachioed man saw Xiu being so confident, he couldn't help but speak. "I've found out exactly where you live and what your background is. You've wasted our two brothers' time for a few days. Do you still think you can bluff us? Have you really found out? Let me advise you, there are some people you can't mess with." Xiu not only didn't panic when he heard this, but asked with a smile on his face. Xiu's frivolous attitude suppressed his mustache, and his normal steps were hesitant. But the next second the bald man's words came back, he choked back. "Renting a house like this, with no furniture except a bed, eating the cheapest fast food, throwing it in the trash can, even a ratata can't eat it, and charging half a sky-high price for anything you buy, what kind of background can such a person have?" The bald man's words seemed to remind the mustache, and he seemed to be irritated by Xiu, but Xiu's next words made him freeze in place. "Then I'm so poor, what are you doing with me? You can tell I have no money." Xiu spread his hands with a look of helplessness on his face. The mustachioed man looked at the bald head in confusion, as if to ask, "Yes, why are we here if he has no money?" The accomplice's imbecile look angered the bald head. "Idiot." After saying that, he ignored the mustache and threw up a poke ball, and a giant beedrill appeared on the field. When the Pokemon appeared, the mustache suddenly came out of the circle and realized why he came here. He cursed, but his hands were not idle. He raised his hand and released a Paras. "I don't know how you can have such a rare Pokemon, but today it's my turn to get rich." Xiu looked at Paras with some curiosity. It looked like two mushrooms growing on the back of a bug. Its eyes were like two protruding glass balls, and there were some small protrusions on its forehead. Its forelimbs were particularly strong. "Giant beedrill, use missile needle." The bald man was ruthless and wanted to take his life as soon as he opened his mouth. The giant beedrill flapped its wings and rushed forward, closing the distance with Xiu, and then raised its hands like a knight's lance, and a ball of light condensed at the tip of the spear. When it expanded to the size of a fist, it was torn into strips of light arrows and shot forward. Xiu did not hesitate at all, stepped back a few steps, and took out the pokeball with his backhand. A flash of light passed by, and the figure of Scyther appeared in front of Xiu. The next second, Xiu only heard the sound of hard objects colliding in front of him, and the splashing light spots filled his eyes. When the situation settled down, Xiu saw that the approaching light arrows were cut down by Scyther. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 27. The Scyther cut down all the missile needles, and its relaxed posture fully demonstrated the effect of its training during this period. However, the opponent was not afraid of the strength of the Scyther, but became more excited. His eyes were all focused on the Scyther, and he didn't care about Xiu behind it. This scyther is worth at least 700,000 or 800,000 or even a million if you like it. The mustache looked more and more fanatical, and hurriedly urged Paras. Hurry up. Just as he said this, a trace of heartache flashed across his face, and he added, don't hurt it, otherwise it's worthless, use hypnotic powder. And Paras crawled towards the scyther. The speed was not fast, but it was not slow. The really strange thing was that it slowly shook the small mushroom behind it, and a light yellow substance like dust began to spread around it. Get closer and pull up the giant bee, Xiu commanded expressionlessly. Upon hearing this, scyther exploded violently, leaving a shadow, completely expanding its advantage. The Beedrill, who originally wanted to continue long-range harassment, was stunned when he saw scyther approaching him, and was frightened to lift up a bit. Although scyther cannot fly, it also has wings, and the explosive power of its legs is even better. It kicked the ground and flew into the air. With the ability of wings to temporarily float in the air, it came to the front of the Beedrill, raised its two swords, and then chopped them down with force. The Beedrill had no choice but to raise its two guns to block it above its head. With a bang, scyther flew backwards, and the Beedrill fell directly from the air. There was an obvious cut mark on the bone double guns it blocked in front of it. The scyther that was blocked was stunned. Xiu immediately noticed the abnormality of scyther, and looked over to find that the sickle was broken. But the Beedrill had adjusted and flew up again. Not far away, Paras also pulled up the mist composed of spores and crawled towards it. Stand up. Go up and pull up Beedrill, cut off its wings. Xiu's roar had some effect. Scyther came back from his trance and rushed towards Beedrill as if to vent his anger. But Beedrill had already adjusted himself and raised his hand to fire a missile needle. Seeing this, Scyther did not retreat but advanced, and directly launched a missile in the flesh. When it came into contact, it changed its body several times and actually dodged most of the attacks. Even if a few of them failed to dodge in time, it could be chopped off with one knife. It passed through the dense barrage without being hit, and used this to close the distance with Beedrill again. It can be seen that the training results of fine-tuning dodge and moving attack designed by Xiu for it were excellent. Scyther's operation really made Beedrill a little panicked. Seeing that it was about to get close again, it actually forgot that it had wings. Get out of the way. The bald man's order came late, but it also gave Beedrill the proper reminder, so it tried to rise and fly off the ground. Go and hit that bald man. Xiu watched Beedrill fly away, but he didn't hesitate at all and directly changed the order. This time Xiu was not anxious. Bald man didn't expect Xiu to be so cruel at such a young age. He dared to attack the trainer directly. Looking at the scyther rushing over, he could only hurriedly take out the pokeball and throw it. A fat Rattata appeared in front of him, but Bald Man was still worried and called back the Beedrill in front. Come back quickly. Scyther's burst speed was amazing, and it crossed more than 10 meters in a few seconds. As it was about to get close, the Rattata actually accelerated towards Scyther, a white light flashed on its body, and it rushed straight towards it. Its speed was not to be underestimated at all. Scyther didn't expect Rattata to dare to rush towards it. Its combat awareness was a little weak, and it didn't react in the first time, and it was actually knocked out. Although he raised his knife to block the attack with his muscles at the last moment and was not injured, his rhythm was interrupted. The Beedrill flew back to the bald man, and together with Paras, who was crawling over, the three elves surrounded Scyther. The bald man also realized this, and his face, which was full of panic just now, smiled again. Come on. Catch it and give you a snack when you go back. The bald man's words directly aroused Radha's emotions. It raised its head and screamed at Scyther, and then it shook its fat body and ran away, with layers of flesh waves visible on its body. However, Radha didn't know that Scyther hated certain scenes very much, and when it saw it attacking, it raised its knife without hesitation. It can be seen that it was really angry, and it used a lot of strength. Radha also jumped forward, and the two huge front teeth were like pliers, and it actually bit on the sickle of Scyther. The sharp sickle not only failed to hit Radha, but it broke apart on Radha's mouth, and a gap was directly bitten. Good. Extra snack, the bald man roared when he saw it. The scythe went crazy and raised his hand to throw it away. After being thrown out, Radha fell to the ground and rolled twice, but stood up without any signs of injury. On the contrary, he seemed unusually energetic because of the bald man's praise for his attack just now. Of course, it may have just heard the word extra snack, but it did not prevent it from stopping the scythe. But something strange happened. The Radha, who was full of fighting spirit just now, suddenly staggered and fell down. There was no foreshadowing during this period. The turn was a bit outrageous. Shiu also noticed this. Looking carefully, it turned out that the direction where Scyther had thrown it just now was exactly the path Paras had walked. The remaining hypnotic powder was sucked into Radha, which directly caused this situation. Shiu could find it, and the other party also found it, but the bald man roared loudly. "Idiot! Quickly let your stupid mushroom worm put this away and get out of here." The mustache shook when he heard it. It was obvious that he was often bullied by the bald man. Even if he was told so, he just obediently ordered Paras to go away. And this time Paras, who originally did not dare to approach the battle, walked away, and the disgusting hypnotic powder directly lost its effect, and Shiu's previous purpose of letting Scyther pull them up was achieved. Now Radha fell to the ground, Paras retreated, and the original siege became a one-on-one duel between Beedrill and Scyther. "Don't be afraid of it, the sickle has been bitten to pieces by Radha, hurry up," the bald man shouted, urging Beedrill forward. Scyther's condition was indeed a bit bad at this time. The previous series of bursts had almost drained its physical strength, and its pair of sickles also had scars from the previous attack. One side had a little bit of a missing blade and cracks, and the other side was almost completely bitten through by that bite. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 28. Kill people. A voice broke the rare calm. Shiu's words directly reminded the flying mantis, and it abandoned the giant sting bee and ran towards the bald head. "Hey! Stop it quickly!" The giant needle wasp could only use its two guns to fight the flying mantis. For a time, the two guns and the two knives continued to collide fiercely, making bursts of muffled sounds. Not far away, Shiu looked at the situation on the field without any worry, his expression was too calm. As expected, the flying mantis was overwhelmed by the continuous battles, and the forward combos of the giant needle wasp were even more difficult for it to handle, and the collision of swords and guns also produced results. The blades of flying mantis's double blades, which were already full of cracks, became pitted, and the cracks penetrated deeply into the blades. Although the giant sting wasp on the opposite side is not in good condition, and its two guns are full of various marks, it is far from damaging its roots. As an adult, it will definitely last longer than the flying mantis. A ray of red light penetrated into the battle and immediately took away the declining flying mantis. At this time, the bald man realized that Shiu had been approaching for some time, but he was not surprised at all. Instead, he said to Shiu angrily, "I have such strength when I was young. Thank you very much for training me so well. The price is definitely it can be improved a lot." Shiu didn't pay much attention to the provocation. He slowly turned his head to look at him and asked, "Do you know why I chose this place?" The bald man was stunned for a moment when he heard this, while Shiu Zi had already turned around and ran into the abandoned factory, giving them no time to react. "Hey! Chase him quickly, don't let that kid get away." The bald man also reacted and immediately called the needle bee to rush into the factory. The mustache on the other side also followed subconsciously, but the distance was further away and could only lag behind the two of them. When the bald man rushed over, he only saw the rusty door of the abandoned factory. The iron chain originally wrapped around it had been opened at some point, and was dangling half-stretched on it. "Superior!" the bald man shouted and led the stingy bee forward. But as soon as he pushed the door open, he felt something was wrong with his touch. However, before he could react, a strange sound came from behind the door. After taking a closer look, a stone the size of a wash basin was swinging over from the other side. It looked so powerful and heavy that if it were really hit, it would probably result in death or serious injury. However, the giant needle wasp was standing nearby. When he saw the white light flashing from the two bone spears in the attacking stone's hand, he stabbed forward with all his strength. The two collided without any accident. The stone was thrust into the air and exploded, breaking into several pieces and falling to the ground, without causing any effective attack. It's just that the giant needle wasp wasn't much better. The two spears that had been slashed by the flying mantis finally shattered after a head-on collision with the rock, and the entire spear tip was lost. "Hey! You kid is cheating on me!" The bald man was furious and kicked the door open, but he couldn't hide the fear on his face. When the door opened, Baldhead saw that Chiu hadn't run away, but was standing on the second floor of the factory opposite the door, looking down at him. Judging from his appearance, there was no panic at all as the flying praying mantis was retreating. Instead, he was unusually calm. This time the bald head stopped talking nonsense, and the urge to rush in subsided at the same time. After thinking for a moment, a confident smile appeared on his face and he said, "Ha, it turns out that you kid has been prepared for a long time. I'm afraid everything in the factory is your trap." Shiu stood there silently, without any ripples caused by the bald head's words, just like a piece of wood. This time the bald man became even more hesitant and did not dare to step into the factory. "Brother," the mustached man arrived belatedly. Before he could understand the situation, the bald man asked him to explore the way. "Go, let your elf in." The mustache was not stupid, and of course he could hear that there was something wrong here, but he did not dare to refute, so he could only direct Paras to climb in. Shiu was originally calm, but when he saw Paras coming in, his expression suddenly changed, and then he turned and ran away. The bald man at the door saw Shiu's reaction and immediately shouted, "Hey! That kid lied to me." As he said that, he rushed forward, and the giant sting wasp on the side had no choice but to follow, and the mustache also followed after a moment's hesitation. But just a few steps after he ran in, Shiu, who had turned around and ran away, suddenly walked back slowly. There was no panic on his face, but only a mocking smile. This time the bald man's heart skipped a beat and he carefully looked around, but he only saw an empty factory building and nothing strange. But this only made it more panicked. "What do you want?" The bald man yelled something loudly to Shiu, but everyone could hear the stern look on his face. "I should be the one asking you what you want to do." Shiu put his hands on the fence and looked down at them. "Go." Big Needlebee the bald head didn't know what tricks Shiu wanted to play, but he didn't forget what he relied on. The giant Needlebee acted upon hearing this, and immediately flew towards Shiu. The slightly intact spear was lifted up, and it seemed that it was about to pierce Shiu's body in the next second. However, Shiu didn't pay any attention to the approaching giant Needlebee. Instead, he stood up slowly and raised his hand towards it. In an instant, a slender branch shot out from a corner like a sharp arrow. At such a close distance and with such a fast speed, the beedrill had no time to react before being shot at its huge abdomen. The arrow even had the remaining force and shot through it, leaving a line of blood. The beedrill flew forward a little bit, and then the wings behind it seemed to react and stopped flapping. It fell from the air and hit the ground heavily. The blood mixed with the internal organs was squeezed out from the wound. This scene stunned the two people below. Shiu raised his hand and made the beedrill invalid. This situation was completely beyond their understanding. This. The mustache took a step back unconsciously. What are you afraid of? If he is really so powerful, he would not have waited until now. As long as he avoids those traps, what else can he do? The bald man didn't know whether he was talking to his accomplices or to himself. On the contrary, the mustache seemed a little hesitant. After all, he was just a slow Paras. If he died, there would be no Pokemon. Hurry up, we will be happy for a long time after finishing this job, this is worth millions. When the mustache heard this word, his face showed a look of severance, and he gritted his teeth and ordered Paras to move forward. At this time, a fat figure broke into the factory. Jijijiji. The bald man looked and saw that his Lotta had gotten rid of the effect of hypnotic powder at some point and came here. Hurry up. Bite that man to death. The bald man seemed to be completely crazy, and the ruthlessness on his face was obvious. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 29. The character of the elf and the trainer also have an influence, especially the closer you get, the more obvious this influence becomes. Under the command of the bald head, Lotta completely abandoned his rationality, revealed a state of near madness, and ran towards the second floor. Fa. Xiu stared at the Rada and whispered something. As soon as he said this, a sharp arrow suddenly shot out from the corner of the horn, heading straight for Lotta. Just like before, the two met instantly. It's just different from the situation when it pierced the giant needle wasp just now. The sharp arrow shot at Lotta's body was bounced off by its smooth and shiny skin. Xiu frowned slightly when he saw this, and with a slight movement of thought, the second arrow was already fired. But the result was the same as before, they were all ejected. However, this time I saw the subtleties. The real point is that the thick fat buffer removes most of the force, and the smooth fur can bounce it away. The bald man was ecstatic when he saw this, and he did not forget to shout, "Boy, you are dead." Xiu didn't have much fluctuation. Seeing that Lotta was about to climb the stairs and jump to the second floor, he murmured. Click. A crisp sound resounded in the empty factory. The bald man had to look up to find the source. A thick cement slab fell from the blind spot at the stairway, hitting Lotta, who had just climbed up, making a loud noise. Bang! The old warehouse was suddenly filled with smoke and dust, and there was still a slight lingering sound. This time, the bald man was dumbfounded. He looked at the smoke and dust above and hurriedly shouted Lotta's name. When the smoke and dust dissipated, all they saw was that the cement board had cracked into several pieces, and Lotta was being pinned to the ground, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. However, after the bald head yelled a few times, Narada actually reacted. He woke up after a few moves, and then tried to break free from the cement board pressing on him. The bald man was overjoyed to see this, but the smile disappeared from his face in the next second. Because one foot directly stepped on the cement floor, the original hope of breaking free was completely cut off. Xiu expressionlessly picked up the broken cement block beside him. Lotta resisted desperately, and his screams became more rapid and sharp, but it could not stop Xiu's movement and hit Lotta directly on the head. This blow directly knocked Lotta unconscious, and the resistance from the cement board was much weaker. When the bald man below saw this, he went crazy and rushed towards the side, but a Casey floated out from Xiu's side and raised his hand to point at him. A sharp arrow penetrated the bald head's thigh directly. He fell down while running, leaving a long trail of blood on the ground. Then Bald Head realized what he was doing, hugging his legs and wailing. Ah! 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 No matter what happened on his side, Xiu still kept repeating the movements of his hands, hitting Lotta's head with cement blocks again and again. Until Lotta completely lost his life. Xiu threw away the cement block covered with flesh and blood, took a long breath, and whispered to himself, "Who goes up the stairs without a helmet?" At this time, Lotta's entire head had been smashed, and the bones, brains, blood, and flesh were mixed together. It could be said that it was completely changed beyond recognition. Xiu didn't care about the bald head below that was wailing continuously. Instead, he reached out and groped in the blood, then took out two bone fragments that were nearly the size of a palm, and shook off the blood foam on them, revealing his true appearance. It turned out to be Lotta's two front teeth. "This thing can bite through steel, I don't know if it's true." Just saying that, Xiu suddenly turned his head and looked down, and whispered, "Is it too late to leave now?" As soon as Xiu said this, the mustache's legs went weak and he almost fell to his knees. He only saw him turn around tremblingly and said with a sad face, "Brother, please let me go, it really doesn't matter. It's my business." As he spoke, Xiu actually heard vibrato and was speechless for a moment. Hugh slowly came down the stairs, Casey floating next to him. "What's the hurry? I still have something to ask you." Xiu didn't bother to deal with this kind of person and looked directly at the bald head. At this time, Huang Tianyu's face was pale and he looked very weak. The wound on his leg was still bleeding and a pool of blood had formed on the ground. "It's so miserable." Xiu stood in front of the bald head and said in a calm tone. The bald man was so stubborn that he actually turned his head away and ignored Xiu. Seeing that this was nothing, Xiu asked with a smile, "If you don't stop bleeding now, you only have 3 to 5 minutes to live. Why don't you cherish your life so much?" "Humph," the bald head snorted coldly, "if you lose, you lose. In our line of work." Oh, the corners of Xiu's mouth raised slightly, with a hint of mockery on his face. "In that case, I will satisfy you." Before the bald man could even react after saying this, a branch went directly through his throat. "Ah, ah." The bald man covered his neck with one hand, and stretched out his other hand tremblingly towards Xiu, his eyes full of fear and astonishment. Obviously, his hands couldn't cover his thighs, let alone his neck. Blood kept seeping from between his fingers, and the original 3 minutes was accelerated to 30 seconds. Even to his death, he never understood why Xiu had done this. "I was just bragging, why are you serious about it?" Xiu stood up and looked at the mustache on one side, and asked with a smile, "What about you?" "Ah." The mustache ran out like crazy, but the rusty iron door slammed shut. He threw himself on it, madly, but completely forgot that the door was opened inwards. "Tell me, what are your origins and why did you come to me? If your answer satisfies me, I will let you go." Xiu walked slowly, and the mustache turned around suddenly. "We are just gangsters. Some time ago, I saw you had a flying mantis, and we planned to make some money." At this time, the mustache was already crying. Every time Xiu took a step, he stepped back, but he was already stuck to the door and couldn't step back. "You are the ones who entered my house? How did you get in?" "I can open the lock. I can open that old-fashioned lock in 10 seconds. The mustache was afraid that if he answered slowly, he would be shot in the throat, and he even learned to answer quickly, and his mouth seemed to be burned and he kept saying words. "We are also the ones who followed." Xiu revealed their identities and backgrounds in just a few words. "These two are the local hooligans. They saw Xiu jogging with Scythe a few days ago. Seeing that he was young, they seemed to have bad intentions. They are not stupid. On the contrary, they are quite experienced in the underworld. They know to investigate Xiu's situation before taking action." However, Xiu was already wary of the hunter organization coming to his door, so he was very vigilant. He had already discovered the two of them and led them here. This is why the scene just now happened. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 30. The two of them thought they had picked a soft persimmon and wanted to pinch it. Xiu, on the other hand, thought that the hunter organization had come to visit him. While he pretended not to know, he started to make preparations. He had chosen this abandoned factory for a long time. It was located in a remote place but within the suburbs. The surrounding area was wide and uninhabited, but it was not far from the road. The structure inside is also quite complicated, with a large number of abandoned and demolished factories, dormitories, and workshops, which are quite suitable for designing traps. Xiu arranged not only the ones just now, but also more interesting designs in the depths. For this reason, he stayed up late at night for several days to arrange them. He originally arranged the situation according to the most difficult situation. It can be said that from the beginning, he wanted to use the factory to entangle the attention of those people, and then set the place on fire to make the matter bigger. While pretending to die, he would lure those people from Juncha over, so that he only then can I have a chance to run away. Only when two tigers fight can he, a little mouse, have a way to survive. Otherwise, he will be found no matter how he runs. But he didn't expect that he thought too much, and only two homeless people came to his door. To be honest, Xiu's arrangements at the door were all trivial. He wanted to lure the enemy deeper, and then he would really get started later. It's just that these two losers can't even get through here, and the others behind them are even less useful, which really makes him a little disappointed. As for the flying mantis, Xiu's original intention was to practice in actual combat. He must be sure that he would escape unscathed before he dared to act like this. Now that he got the information he wanted, he no longer had any value. Xiu looked at the mustache. It really has nothing to do with me. It was all forced by him. I didn't do anything. When the mustache saw Xiu standing in front of him, looking at him without saying a word, his heart sank deeper and deeper, almost to the point of falling. Let's go. After Xiu said this, the door slowly moved open just a crack. The mustache was stunned for a moment in disbelief, and then hurriedly crawled towards the gap as if relieved, not forgetting to say thank you. Thank you. But just as he was about to go out, a sharp thorn protruded from his chest. The mustache felt a sharp pain in his heart, and then he fell to the ground, and the hand was reaching out. Just one step, one step. Xiu looked at the bearded corpse with an expressionless face and murmured. Since you are in this business, you must be mentally prepared. Looking at the bodies of the two people, Xiu did not show any discomfort. A person will definitely not be able to leave alive. Letting him go would undoubtedly be suicide, just like if they snatched Xiu's elf, they would not let him leave alive. This Xiu knew very well. What's more, he doesn't have any psychological burden to kill such a rotten person. It's just that the scene is a bit difficult to deal with, and there is Paras who is controlled by Casey. Get rid of it? This thing has done so many bad things. Xiu glanced at the picky Paras. This kind of elf is not suitable for fighting at all. It usually just hypnotizes unsuspecting humans and assists two bad guys in petty theft. If it really wants to be put on the table, it will be like that just now. If something is not done well, it will be delayed. Xiu's words directly determined the life and death of Paras. With a thought from Kathy, Paras was completely twisted away. I don't know if it tastes good when grilled. Xiu looked at it and thought it looked a bit like a lobster. It was almost evening, but by the time Xiu finished those things and returned home, it was already dark. Come out. Xiu released the flying mantis. As soon as the flying mantis came out, he was on high alert. He put his hands in front of his chest, bent his back and assumed a defensive posture that he hadn't seen for a while. He carefully looked at the surrounding situation until he saw Xiu's familiar environment. Relax a little. It looks slightly better at this time than when it was exhausted before, but its mental state has become as pitted as its pair of sides. Don't be afraid. Casey and I have already solved it. You have tried your best today. I can't blame you. Xiu watched the flying mantis condition and waited for it to calm down before asking. It's been a while since you came out with me, and the impact of that accident on you has been minimized. In any case, you have grown up enough to be on your own. The flying mantis looked at Xiu with some confusion. It didn't understand why Xiu said this, but the next second Xiu's words made it freeze in place as if it was struck by lightning. Now let me ask you a question, do you still want to stay with me, or should I send you back to the park and give you your freedom? When Xiu said this, the flying mantis was completely stunned, and for a moment he didn't know what kind of reaction he should give. Do you think you could have dealt with those two and their elves before? Xiu stared at the flying mantis, and his tone gradually changed. Instead of the gentleness before, it was very plain, so plain that the flying mantis was a little scared. It's impossible, but why are you able to deal with him now, and even almost succeed in counterattack? Think about it yourself. Why? Xiu didn't even intend to wait for it to answer, and continued talking on his own. It's the training. I've devoted all my resources to you, and the training I arrange for you every day. Do you think what you are eating now can be easily eaten elsewhere? Do you think that everyone has so much time to design so many training programs for you, and do you still have to adjust them in real time according to the actual situation? The flying mantis finally found some meaning after Xiu's words were thrown out, but Xiu's words did not mean to stop. I'm very attentive to you, spending so much time training with you every day, but what about you? How do you treat me? He is lazy in training, does not listen to instructions, and becomes arrogant when he achieves just a few results. But what about today? Your battle was full of mistakes, without any structure. It was just a waste of your talents, and you forgot the abilities you mastered during training. You must have seen the results. Xiu's words almost crushed the flying mantis, and he put a mask of pain on his face, making him look timid. Now tell me your choice. After saying these words, Xiu left the flying mantis aside, and then took care of himself and released Casey and Xiao Fuden to prepare dinner for them. The flying mantis was too arrogant, so Xiu Ben planned to use this opportunity to attack it and suppress its arrogance. Otherwise, if things continue like this, the flying mantis will have eyes that are too high and will not listen to him at all. No matter how powerful the disobedient elf is, it has no value in cultivating it, because no matter how much resources you invest, it does not belong to you. Let's eat first and then talk about it. At least you didn't run away today, which is already pretty good. Xiu placed the portion belonging to the flying mantis in front of it, and his tone was slightly gentler than before.